The magnetism that drew you in, the feeling of a soulmate, of a recognition that transcended time. It wasn't about her or him. It was about you. You didn't fall in love with a person of flesh and blood. You fell in love with a ghost. A sacred ghost. The image of your own soul, which you projected onto the face of a stranger. Within every man lives an eternal woman, the anima. Within every woman, an ancestral man, the animus. And as long as you don't have the courage to find this figure within yourself, you are condemned to desperately hunt for it in the outside world, jumping from relationship to relationship, from disillusionment to disillusionment, seeking in the other the half that was always inside you. The greatest love story of your life is not with someone else. It is with the part of you that was forgotten. This journey we are about to embark on is not for the faint of heart. It demands the courage to look in the mirror and see beyond your reflection. If you feel ready to stop searching and start finding, to understand the hidden force that governs your passions and sabotages your relationships, then make your choice now. Subscribe to this channel to seal your commitment to this inner journey. And if this first truth has already resonated in your soul, leave your like as a sign, a yes to your own awakening. The door to your inner world is open. Let's begin. Have you ever wondered why certain people mesmerize us while others, no matter how perfect they seem, leave us indifferent? Why do we repeat the same painful patterns in relationships, like actors in a play whose script we don't know, always loving and suffering in the same way? The answer doesn't lie in your logic, in your lists of pros and cons, or even in your conscious intentions. It echoes from a much deeper place, from an inner landscape that most people don't even know exists, a place where ancestral voices whisper truths that your rational mind refuses to hear. This inner landscape is not empty. It is populated by powerful forces, archetypal figures that are the psychic heritage of all humanity. They are the gods and demons that our ancestors projected onto the heavens and into the underworld, but who, in truth, have always dwelled within us. And the two most influential, most dynamic, and consequently, most dangerous figures when ignored, are the anima and the animus. Modern society, in its incessant search for simplification and order, has taught you to be one thing: a man, a woman, a solid, defined, predictable identity. But this is a fraud, a dangerous oversimplification that imprisons you in a small cell of your vast inner house. Within you, there is not a unity, but a sacred duality. At the core of every man, an eternal woman dances, the anima, and at the center of every woman, a timeless man rides, the animus. They are not poetic metaphors, nor mere feminine or masculine sides. They are complex and autonomous psychic structures, inner personalities with their own wills, desires, and memories that live and breathe in your unconscious. To ignore them is the greatest act of self-sabotage one can commit. It is to hand over the helm of your life to an invisible and often furious captain. It is to condemn yourself to search outside for the half that was always inside, projecting onto flesh and blood partners the weight of a god or a goddess they can never be. And every disillusionment, every broken heart, every feeling of emptiness after a conquest is just the echo of that inner voice begging to be recognized. A voice that, when neglected for too long, no longer whispers, it screams, it rages, and it becomes a sabotaging demon. On this journey, we will not offer you easy answers or self-help formulas. We will do something much more dangerous. We will hand you a mirror forged in the fire of depth psychology, capable of reflecting not your face, but your soul. Looking into it will hurt. It will confuse. It will shatter the comfortable certainties you have built around you like a wall. But if you have the courage to hold your gaze, you will find the key not only to radically transform your relationships, but to become whole, complete, total. The journey to individuation, to becoming who you truly are, inevitably passes through this confrontation. The journey inward begins now. The anima is by no means a simple concept about masculine sensitivity. To reduce it to that would be like describing the ocean as wet water. She is the archetypal personification of all of man's ancestral experiences with woman, distilled into a living image in the collective unconscious. She is the great mother, the seductive lover, the innocent maiden, the wise priestess, and the terrifying sorceress, all at the same time. She is the mediator between a man's consciousness, his ego, and the unfathomable depths of his unconscious, the portal to the self, the center of psychic totality. She is the personification of eros, the principle of relatedness, of connection, of feeling, and of life itself in its chaotic and creative flow. When a man is disconnected from his anima, he lives a life in black and white. His logic may be brilliant, his career successful, but his existence lacks color, meaning, soul. He becomes rigid, dogmatic, and emotionally shallow. His relationships are functional, but not intimate. He fears the world of emotions as an unknown and dangerous territory, dismissing it as irrational or a woman's thing. However, the anima cannot be suppressed forever. When ignored, she takes her revenge. She manifests negatively, possessing the man through dark moods, sudden irritability, sticky sentimentality, and a venomous susceptibility to imaginary offenses. He becomes a victim of the external femme fatale. Because he does not recognize the internal femme fatale, he is magnetically drawn to women who embody the neglected state of his own soul, perhaps chaotic, emotionally unstable, or manipulative, endlessly reliving a destructive drama. The integration of the anima is the most crucial task in the second half of a man's life. It begins with the painful withdrawal of projections, the act of stopping the search for the dream woman and starting a dialogue with the woman who lives in his dreams. This dialogue occurs through attention to the inner life, to dreams, to fantasies, to the art that moves him, to the qualities that inexplicably fascinate or irritate him in women. It is a process of valuing feeling, intuition, and vulnerability, not as weaknesses, but as essential tools for navigating life. In doing so, a man does not become less of a man. On the contrary, he becomes a complete man. A man who unites the clarity of logos with the depth of eros. His creativity explodes, for the anima is the archetypal muse. His capacity for relationship deepens radically, as he can now meet the real woman, instead of demanding that she be a receptacle for his projected soul. He discovers the soul in the world, and more importantly, discovers the world in his own soul. The integrated anima is the inner guide, the Sophia, the wisdom that connects him to the meaning and mystery of existence. Just as the anima shapes the inner life of a man, the animus is the corresponding figure in a woman's psyche. He is the personification of the archetypal masculine, the distillate of all of a woman's ancestral experiences with man. He is the hero, the warrior, the father, the sage, the judge, and the tyrant. If the anima is eros, the principle of connection, the animus is logos, the principle of structure, discernment, meaning, and directed action. He is the bridge between a woman's consciousness and her creative unconscious, but in a different way than the anima. He is not so much a guide to mystery, but the tool that gives form and structure to the intuitions and feelings that emerge from the depths. He is the sword of the feminine soul, the ability to cut through the superfluous, to think clearly, to have the courage to defend her convictions, and to act in the world with purpose. A woman disconnected from her positive animus feels passive, powerless, with a sense of drifting through life. Her opinions are vague, often reflections of the opinions of authority figures around her father, husband, society. She may have a rich emotional life, but feels unable to translate her feelings and intuitions into effective action. She may dream of great projects, but lacks the assertiveness and planning to make them a reality. She feels incomplete, as if she needs external masculine validation to give meaning to her existence. When the animus is unconscious, he, like the anima, becomes possessive and destructive. He does not manifest as moods, but as opinions. A negative animus turns a woman into a dogmatic, argumentative, and stubborn creature. Her opinions are not genuine thoughts but rigid, emotionally charged assertions repeated like a mantra. That's just how things are. Everyone knows that. She becomes her own jailer, trapped in a tower of cold certainties that isolate her from her own feelings and from the people around her. She can become cold, calculating, and obsessed with power, or, conversely, be drawn to men who personify this dark animus, authoritarian, critical, or distant figures. The integration of the animus is a woman's journey to find her own voice and her own inner authority. It begins when she stops looking for an external savior and begins to cultivate her own logos. This involves questioning her own ingrained beliefs, learning to think independently and critically, and developing the courage to express her truth even if it creates conflict. It is the process of transforming I think into I know, and I feel into I do. A woman with a well-integrated animus is a force of nature. She combines the depth of her feminine intuition eros with the clarity of purpose and capacity for action of the masculine logos. She is not an imitation of a man. She is a complete woman who possesses her own sword and knows when and how to use it. She is creative, assertive, and spiritually autonomous. She does not need a man to complete her, and therefore, she is able to enter into a relationship not out of need, but out of choice. As a whole being meeting another whole being, the journey of integrating these archetypes is not a single event, but an evolutionary process that Jung described in 4 distinct stages. For the anima in man, the ascent begins with Eve, the most primitive stage. Here, the anima is fused with the image of the mother and represents the purely biological and instinctua. Feminine. A man at this stage seeks a woman who will take care of him, who will nurture his basic needs. The relationship is primarily physical and dependent, and the woman is seen more as a function than as an individual. Sexuality is inseparable from the maternal care instinct. The second stage is that of Helen of Troy. Here, the anima is elevated to the romantic and aesthetic level. The woman is idealized as an object of sexual desire and unattainable beauty. This is the world of muses, of overwhelming passions, but it is still a projection. The man falls in love with the image, the fantasy, and the connection rarely survives the test of reality. The woman is valued for her appearance and her ability to ignite the man's imagination, but her individuality and depth are still ignored. The third stage is that of Mary, the Virgin. This is a great leap, as the feminine begins to be seen as a bearer of spiritual value. The anima manifests as devotion, purity, and a capacity for love that transcends the carnal. A man at this stage may become devoted to a cause or to a woman he perceives as morally superior. The danger here is the idealization of holiness, which still denies the woman's totality, including her shadow. However, it is a crucial step as Eros begins to be perceived as a spiritual force. The final stage is Sophia, wisdom. Here, the anima is finally integrated. She is no longer projected onto external women, but functions as an inner guide, the mediator of the unconscious's wisdom. The man with the Sophia anima is capable of deep and true relationships, has access to his creativity, and lives a life rich in meaning. Analogously, the animus in woman evolves. The first stage is that of the man of muscle, the Tarzan or the athlete. The masculine is perceived purely as physical strength, power, and prowess. The woman is attracted to raw vitality and the capacity for physical action. The second stage is that of the man of action or the romantic. Here, the animus possesses initiative, ambition, and the ability to plan. He is the romantic hero who can save the damsel, but the woman still depends on him for a sense of purpose. She lives through his achievements. The third stage is that of the bearer of the word, the professor, the priest, the orator. The animus here manifests as logos, the power of the intellect, authority, and meaning. The woman may become an intellectual or be drawn to men who represent this knowledge. The danger is possession by rigid opinions and a disconnection from feeling. The final stage is Hermes, the spiritual guide. The animus becomes the mediator of meaning, connecting the woman's mind to her spiritual depth. She does not just think, she understands. She does not just act, she acts with meaning. She becomes her own spiritual authority, creatively and dynamically uniting intellect and intuition. The journey through these stages is the very journey of individuation. When a man fails to establish a conscious relationship with his anima, she doesn't disappear. She becomes dark, autonomous, and destructive. The shadow of the anima is one of the most treacherous forces in the male psyche. It operates behind the scenes, poisoning his relationships, sabotaging his will, and keeping him in a state of perpetual emotional immaturity. One of its most common manifestations is mood instability. The man possessed by the shadow anima is a victim of emotions he doesn't understand and cannot control. He can go from inexplicable euphoria to deep melancholy in a matter of minutes, always blaming external factors, work, his partner, the world for his internal turmoil. In reality, it is the whims and resentments of his neglected inner woman coming to the surface. He becomes sentimental, but not truly feeling. Sentimentality is a superficial, sticky, and self-absorbed emotion, whereas genuine feeling is a function of relatedness, a real connection to another. He cries at movies but is incapable of true empathy for his partner. Another dangerous facet is the projection of the siren or the sorceress. He is irresistibly drawn to women who embody his dark anima, perhaps seductive, but emotionally unavailable, chaotic, and full of drama, or with a victim aura that appeals to his savior complex. He enters these relationships with overwhelming intensity, convinced he has found the love of his life, only to find himself trapped in a cycle of manipulation, jealousy, and emotional exhaustion. He is, in fact, trying to rescue or control his own chaotic soul through an external figure. The dark anima also destroys creativity. Instead of being a muse that inspires creation, she becomes a force that keeps him trapped in sterile fantasies. He can spend hours daydreaming about great works he never writes, about projects he never starts. He falls in love with the idea of being an artist, a writer, a creator, but the dark anima seduces him into the world of fantasy, where no real effort is required. Is procrastination elevated to a life principle? Finally, the shadow of the anima manifests as a subtle poison through gossip, malicious comments, and intrigue. When a man indulges in this behavior, he is completely possessed. These are indirect, manipulative tactics that reveal an inability for direct confrontation and a resentful bitterness toward life. Confronting the shadow of the anima requires the man to stop blaming the women in his life for his unhappiness and start looking at the source of his own poison. It requires him to take responsibility for his moods, his destructive attractions, and his inertia, recognizing them as messages from a vital part of himself that has been deeply wounded and neglected. The shadow of the animus in the female psyche is equally devastating, but its manifestations are different. While the dark anima drags one into a swamp of chaotic emotions, the dark animus imprisons one in a concrete fortress of intellectual certainties, the woman. Possessed by the dark animus is not governed by moods, but by opinions. And these are not thoughtful, flexible opinions open to dialogue. They are dogmatic, impersonal, and often brutal convictions, delivered as absolute and unquestionable truths. She does not dialogue, she decrees. This animus manifests as an incessantly critical and judgmental inner voice. It is a sadistic judge living in her head, criticizing everything she does, feels, and thinks. You're not good enough. You're stupid. No one will take you seriously. This voice paralyzes her creativity and destroys her self-esteem, keeping her in a state of anxiety and insecurity. To the outside world, however, she may project this criticism. She becomes argumentative, stubborn, and destructive in discussions, seeking not truth, but victory. Her logic is sharp as a razor, but cold and devoid of feeling. She uses logos not to illuminate, but to wound, to dissect others and prove her point at any cost. She isolates herself in her intellectual superiority, losing the connection to her heart and to the people around her. Another form of the shadow animus is an obsession with power and control, a cold imitation of masculinity. She can become a ruthless workaholic, sacrificing her health, her relationships, and her joy in the name of an ambition that is not truly hers, but that of the animus possessing her. She believes she is in control, but she is actually a puppet of an archetypal force that is draining her of her femininity and her very soul. In relationships, the dark animus leads her to be attracted to men who personify this shadow. She may fall for intellectual geniuses who are emotionally distant and critical, for authority figures who dominate her, or for weak, passive men over whom she can exercise her own power tyrannically. In all cases, a genuine relationship of equals is impossible. Possession by the animus can also lead to a strange kind of passivity. The internal critical voice can be so overwhelming that she gives up on acting in the world, falling into a state of inertia and resignation, convinced of her own inadequacy. She becomes a victim of fate, secretly ruled by an inner tyrant. The journey to confront the shadow of the animus requires a woman to question the origin of her sacred opinions. She needs to ask, is this my true voice, or is it the voice of my father, of society, of an ancestral judge who lives in me? It requires the courage to say I don't know, and to open herself to the world of feeling, intuition, and uncertainty. It is the process of melting the ice fortress of certainties, to allow the river of her soul to flow again. No stage reveals the drama of the anima and animus more clearly than intimate relationships. It is here, in the minefield of love, passion, and cohabitation, that these internal figures project themselves with volcanic force. The phenomenon of falling in love, of love at first sight, is rarely an encounter between two real people. More often than not, it is a purely archetypal event. A man's anima and a woman's animus recognize and project themselves onto each other. The man doesn't see the woman in front of him. He sees the embodiment of his soul, the bearer of all his hopes, desires, and fantasies. The woman doesn't see the man. She sees the hero, the sage, the personification of the meaning and purpose she seeks. They fall in love with the image the other carries. This initial projection is incredibly powerful and seductive. It creates a feeling of completeness, of having found the other half. The world becomes magical, and the couple feels enveloped in a bubble of perfection. However, projections are, by nature, unsustainable. Reality inevitably begins to seep in. The man discovers that his goddess has bad moods, insecurities, and annoying habits. The woman discovers that her hero has fears, weaknesses, and childish stubbornness. At this point, crisis is inevitable. The most common reaction is disillusionment and blame. "You're not the person I thought you were," they accuse. The truth is, the other person never was that person. The projected image begins to withdraw, and what remains is an ordinary human being. For many, this is the end of the relationship. They leave in search of a new hook for their projections, repeating the cycle indefinitely. However, for those who have courage, this moment of crisis is the real opportunity. It is the invitation to begin a real relationship. The work consists of consciously withdrawing the projection. In a painful process of differentiation, the man must ask, what qualities do I admire or detest in her that are, in fact, aspects of my own undeveloped anima? The woman must do the same with her animus. The relationship becomes a mirror, an alchemical laboratory for self-knowledge. Every conflict, every irritation, becomes a clue about what needs to be integrated internally. If the man is irritated by his partner's irrationality, perhaps it is his own anima that he represses. If the woman is frustrated by her partner's passivity, perhaps it is her own animus that needs to be activated. By doing this work, the couple moves from romantic love, based on projection, to true love, based on recognizing the other as a separate and whole individual. The goal of the relationship ceases to be the search for happiness in the other, and becomes the journey of individuation side by side. The energy that was once spent on accusations and disappointments is used for personal development, and paradoxically, it is in this process that a much deeper and more lasting intimacy becomes possible. The integration of the anima and animus is not a purely intellectual exercise. It is a living practice, a continuous dialogue with the forces of the unconscious. The first and most crucial step is to accept the reality of these inner figures. You must begin to treat them not as abstract concepts, but as real personalities that inhabit your psyche. Without this attitude, any attempt at dialogue will be sterile. One of the most powerful techniques to begin this conversation is what Jung called active imagination. This is not the same as passively daydreaming. It is a conscious process of focusing on a mood, a dream image, or a fantasy and allowing it to develop, interacting with it as if it were real. Find a quiet place where you will not be interrupted. Close your eyes and bring to mind the emotion or image that disturbs you. Instead of pushing it away, invite it to take form. Ask, who is there? What form do you have? What do you want from me? Give this figure a voice. Let it speak without censorship and respond to it. Write down the dialogue as if you were writing a script for a play. At first, it may feel artificial, but with practice, the figure will begin to reveal its autonomy, saying things your conscious mind would never expect. This is the beginning of a real relationship. Another fundamental tool is dream work. Dreams are the language of the unconscious, and the anima and animus are frequent characters in our nocturnal theater. Keep a dream journal by your bed and write down everything you remember upon waking, no matter how fragmented. Pay special attention to the male figures for a woman and female figures for a man that appear. What are they like? What do they do? What do they say? Are they friendly or threatening? Each dream figure reveals an aspect of your inner archetype. Drawing, painting, or sculpting these images is also a powerful form of dialogue. Art allows the unconscious to express itself non-verbally, bypassing the ego's defenses. Don't worry about technical quality. The goal is to give concrete form to the psychic energy. By painting your anima or sculpting your animus, you are literally making them conscious and establishing a connection. Finally, pay attention to projections in real life. When you feel inexplicably fascinated or irritated by someone, stop and ask yourself, what quality does this person carry that belongs to my own inner figure? Use every intense emotional reaction as a reminder to look within. This work requires patience, discipline, and, above all, humility. You are dealing with powerful archetypal forces. Do not try to dominate or control them. The goal is to listen, learn, and build a relationship of mutual respect. It is a path of negotiation and collaboration with the deepest parts of yourself. The culmination of the long and arduous journey of integrating the anima and animus is an event of profound symbolic and psychological significance, which the ancient alchemists called the coniunctio, or the chemical wedding. This is the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage between the inner masculine and feminine, between the sun logos and the moon eros, within the soul of the individual. This is not a state of static perfection, but a dynamic and creative union of opposites that generates a new and higher form of consciousness. The individual who achieves this state of totality does not eliminate their internal tensions, but learns to hold them in a fertile balance. The personality becomes an alchemical vessel where the inner king and queen can meet, dialogue, and create something new. The benefits of this union are profound and transformative. Firstly, there's an explosion of creativity. Genuine creativity is born from the union of the masculine and feminine. Intuition and inspiration feminine are united with structure, discipline, and the ability to manifest masculine. The man with an integrated anima not only has ideas, he brings them to fruition. The woman with an integrated animus not only has a purpose, she manifests it in the world with clarity and strength. Life becomes a work of art. Secondly, relationships are radically transformed. When an individual no longer needs to project their animic counterpart, they become capable of loving the other in their real totality. The relationship ceases to be a battlefield of needs and projections and becomes a space for mutual growth. Intimacy deepens, as there is no longer a fear of revealing one's own totality, including the shadow. Love becomes less of a desperate need and more of a generous gift. There's also a significant increase in autonomy and inner authority. The individual no longer seeks external validation. Their moral compass and sense of purpose come from within. From the constant dialogue between their inner principles, they become less susceptible to social pressure and the opinions of the crowd, as they are anchored in the center of their own being, the self. This union generates what Jung called the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to overcome insoluble conflicts by creating a new perspective that transcends and unites the opposites. Instead of being stuck in either or dilemmas, the individual becomes capable of finding a creative third way. Life ceases to be a series of problems to be solved and becomes a mystery to be lived. This sacred marriage is not a final destination, but a continuous process. It is the heart of individuation, the great work of becoming who you truly are, not a half seeking another, but a complete, conscious, and whole human being, a microcosm that reflects the divine union of the cosmos itself. Thus, we arrive not at an end, but at a gateway. We have traversed the labyrinthine corridors of the psyche, where the masculine and feminine dance an eternal choreography of conflict and union. We have seen how the anima and animus, when ignored, become invisible tyrants, condemning us to a life of projections, repetitions, and disillusionments. And we have seen how, when brought into the light of consciousness through courageous and honest work, they become our greatest allies, the guides to our own wholeness. The journey inward is not an escape from the world. It is the preparation to live in it authentically. Remember this as the most fundamental truth of our journey. You are not broken. You are not a half searching for another to complete you. That is the greatest lie the romantic culture has told us, a lie that fuels an industry of dissatisfaction. You are an entire universe, containing within you the divine masculine and the divine feminine, the sun and the moon, the sword and the chalice, action and receptivity. The great work of your life is not to find the right person, but to become the whole person. The inner alchemy, the sacred marriage of your opposing forces, is what generates the philosopher's stone. A balanced, creative, conscious personality capable of true love. May this journey serve as an echo, a question that will resonate in the silence of your days. When irritation arises for no reason, ask, is it my voice, or that of my wounded animus demanding to be heard? When melancholy visits you like a fog, question, is it me, or is it my neglected anima crying for attention? Look in the mirror, beyond the face you know, and dare to see the face of the other that dwells within you. There, in that silent recognition, lies the key to your freedom and the seed of your true strength. The final truth is this: a whisper from the collective unconscious to your soul. The external world is merely a reflection of your degree of inner integration. If you desire harmony in your relationships, cultivate peace between your inner king and queen. If you seek meaning in the world, find purpose in their union. If this message has touched something deep within you, something that resonated with an intimate truth you have always known but never had words to name, then do not let it be lost in the torrent of daily information. Make it a landmark. The work is yours and yours alone, but you do not have to walk it alone. The great work of our era is this: the awakening to the reality of the inner world.